Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We're going to be in the Mythic Adventures book today. We're continuing the War Magic series. We are on level 6 divine spells for the video today. So this will finish up the divine spells for this book as far as the War Magic series goes. And then the next video in this series will be the Arcane, which will fully finish up this book. After that, I've been thinking about how I wanted to progress the series. And we'll enter old 3rd edition books and look at their spells 1 through 6. There's at least a handful that might be different than Pathfinder, so that could give us another interesting set of rules to pull spells from. So without further ado, let's find the level 6 cleric divine spells. We'll go over them, read them in detail, and then we'll look at the druid ones after that, if there's any that are different, which usually there is. And that should cover all the level 6 divine spells. So, the level 6 cleric mythic spells are Animate Objects, Blade Barrier, Harm, and Heal. So, let's start with Animate Objects. Animated objects you create with this spell gets the maximum number of hit points per level, gain a +4 bonus on their strength ability scores, and have a 1.5 times the normal number of construction points. The best I can think of is using this on the opposing military and having their weapons, their armor, or parts of their gear animated objects, and then they gotta fight that or deal with that as it's complicating what's going on in the actual battlefield. So it would sow chaos in the area that it affects. Being a mythic spell, it doesn't give me all the details of animate objects, so I don't know the radius of it, or animate objects. So if it's a big enough radius, say a 20-foot radius, 30-foot radius, you can take out that area worth of soldiers fighting with their own stuff for however many rounds either the spell lasts or it takes them to win against the objects, or the objects win and incapacitate or kill them. Depends on how the objects are animated. If they're weapons, I expect them to kill them. If they're parts of the gear, I expect them to tie them up and keep them from participating or making it very difficult to participate in the fight. So there's that one. Next one is Blade Barrier. Blade Barrier. You may cast this spell as an immediate action. The barrier's damage increases to 1d8 per caster level, maximum 20d8. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, you can spend a move action to move the barrier up to 10 feet in any direction. The shape, flat or ring, and orientation, vertical or horizontal, of the wall must remain the same. If you move the barrier through a creature's space, it can attempt a saving throw to avoid the wall, as if you had created it where the creature is. Okay. Being a barrier spells are really good at getting the enemy forces to funnel in a certain way, unless they want to go through the barrier. It's just like any wall spell as far as that goes in my mind. So you can channel them down an area where you could pelt them with arrows, or you could have the area pre-trapped with landmines of different sorts, like buried alchemist fires. They step on and it shoots up fire on them and stuff like that. So all barrier spells are pretty, and wall spells are pretty cool. And the fact that this one can move means you can push the army in a direction you want them to go. So that's pretty cool. Harm and heal spells. I don't really like the harm and heal spells in Pathfinder. The only reason is I played 3.0 D&D when it first came out. The harm and the heal spells in 3.0 D&D is far different than what it is in 3.5 D&D and Pathfinder. The heal spell in 3.0 D&D, you cast that, all the effects of the heal spell, healing any diseases, any poisons, ability, if it heals ability damage, any ability damage, stayed the same for all the changes. The hit points, though, for the 3.0 heal spell, healed you 100% to full, didn't matter what your total was. The harm spell, I believe it gave you a save, plus they had to touch you with it. So there's two effects there that can negate it. If you fail your save, and if it didn't give you a save, sorry, I'm misquoting it. But either way, when you were hit with the harm spell, it dropped you to 1d4 hit points above 0. But the heal spell counters that, so. And then if you used the heal spell on undead, it did the opposite. So it would drop undead to 1d4 hit points. And the harm spell would heal the undead all the way to full. So the heal spell for the mythic spells. The damage cured increases to 15 points of damage per caster level, maximum 225 hit points. Augmented, if you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the spell also acts as a restoration spell. Okay, other than putting it on items that your party could use or your soldiers could use to heal, there's not a lot you can do with it. The same is going to probably be said for harm, except it's the other, to use it for damage. The damage, this is the harm spell. The damage dealt increases to 15 points of damage per caster level, maximum 225 hit points. Augmented, if you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the spell also acts as poison. Well, that's a cool effect. If you could put heal and harm on one-use items, which the level of the spell would make it a very expensive one-use item, but very cheap compared to an item you can use multiple times in a day or multiple times in a week. So it would be useful to be able to put harm on arrowheads, ballista bolt heads, sling bullets, and launch them into the enemy. The downside is the cost of that single piece of ammo. But if you hit, you're going to drop them a boatload of hit points. Let's see, 6th level spells, I think you get it at 11th level. And I could be wrong, tell me in the comments if I am. If you get access to 6th level spells at 11th level, and this one did 15, so that would be 165 points of damage to a single hit, where most of your soldiers are going to be maximum up to about 5th level of the regular army, not anyone that's like knights or the heroes. So that could kill anything it hit. So let's look at the druid spells now. You got fire seeds, move earth, repel wood, terraform, and wall of stone. Let's see if all these spells are actually in this. So fire seeds. So let's turn back a little bit. Fire seeds. Each acorn's damage increases to 1d6 points of fire damage per caster level, maximum 20d6 for all acorns, no more than 10d6 for any particular acorn. Each holy berry's damage increases to 2d6 points of fire damage plus 2 points per caster level. Any creature that fails its reflex save against an acorn or holy berry catches on fire, taking 2d6 points of fire damage each round until the fire is extinguished. Attempts to extinguish this fire uses the spell's save DC. The amount of damage it can do is awesome. The fact that the acorns and the holy berries can do that. The best use I have of this is throwing it at the enemy or setting it up as a trap, a minefield. They start stepping on these acorns and holy berries as they're coming down this valley. You've used a wall spell or natural surroundings to get them to come through to attack you. would really hamper and damage their forces. So that can be pretty useful. So that was the first one. Move Earth. Move Earth. This spell can move Earth much more quickly, with each full round of casting allowing you to reshape a 25-foot square area up to 10 feet deep. All creatures on or under the ground within that area are knocked prone and moved to the closest square outside the area being shaped. A successful reflex save prevents a creature from being knocked prone, but it still is moved. Well, it doesn't do any damage if you're caught in it while it's happening, so you can't use this offensively to hurt a bunch of creatures as you cast it. Now, that said, you can all of a sudden take a 10-foot deep, 20-foot wide area and either raise it up to create a natural barrier, or you can shrink it down and push it down into the earth up to 10 feet deep and create a big pit, which would also control how the enemy has to move around. So that could give you a lot of control on where the enemy's forces can go. If you could put it on a one-use item and you had control over what it did, like raising up or going down, or if that was marked on the item, you could use that to a lot of effect, just throwing it out in an area and having it do that. Next is Repel Wood. Repel Wood. The first change to the spell for being a mythic version is the casting time changes to one immediate action. You may cause one affected wooded object to up to 5 inches in diameter to splinter and break. Augmented third. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the area changes to 60 foot. Cone-shaped emanation from you. That's pretty cool. And the fact that it could splinter up to 5 inches of diameter, that means most weapons, wooden weapons, most shields, there'd be very few things that the military would be using outside of siege engines and wagons that this thing couldn't affect. Now, might not affect doors that are used to protect areas from siege, but it'd work on most other things. So I can see that being very useful. And if you could get the augmented spell put onto a one-use object, you could throw it and it'd have a 60-foot cone area from where it landed. Terraform. Okay. Here's another spell that they did not put into, like they have it in the list, but they don't have anything that it does here. I'd like to challenge somebody that would want to be up to it. When I filmed the last video in the Arcane series of this for the Mythic book, go back and watch all the Mythic ones and tell me how many spells are listed in the class list that do not actually appear in the book. I'm very curious about that. So Terraform's not there. Wall of Stone. Wall of Stone is going to be very useful because it is a wall. It does everything the walls that you're going to want to do. Wall of Stone. The wall is 1 inch thick per 2 caster levels. The wall's hardness increases to 12, which is pretty decent. That's going to mean that every time you want to hit the wall to damage the wall, you got to do 13 points of damage for it to take 1 point of damage. And then its hit points are based on how thick it is. Augmented 7th. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the wall is impassable to ethereal travel and spells such as Pass Wall and Phase Door. The wall is immune to non-mythic Disintegrate, Shatter, Sympathetic Vibration, and other non-mythic magical effects that specifically affect stone, including Earthquake, Soften Earth and Stone, and Transmute Rock to Mud. So if you augment it, it becomes immune to non-mythic spells, which is pretty cool, especially if you're trying to build a fortress or use this specifically to funnel the enemy forces. The downside is you need to augment it up that high to get that effect. The upside to the spell is the hardness is a lot higher than a regular wall of stone. So with a wall of stone, you're going to want to use it to separate the forces if you want to pull your forces back. You're going to want to use it to cut the enemy's forces in half if you cast it at the beginning of a combat. And then you could crush half the force while the other half can't or has to spend time trying to get around the wall. You can also use the wall to, as you retreat, to set it up that the enemy has to funnel into a valley or an area that you already have pre-prepped for your forces to take advantage of with traps, or where they can rain down arrows and stuff to them, or just reduce their numbers of effect. Say only a handful of them can fight at a time, and then you have the advantage that way. Where, say, if you're at the other end of the valley where it's more open, you could set you up a wide area and they only have a small force that could come in. But that also works against you if you need to pursue them. So it's things to weigh. That'll end this Divine Spells for the War Magic series on the Mythic Handbook. So, if you enjoyed it, let me know in the comments below. If any of these seemed a little bit more useful to you in other ways, put them in the comments below. Until we all game again, guys.